Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome to AZ BRANDCAST, where we talk about all sorts of awesome people and the power of brand and how to build great brands in our remarkable state of Arizona. I'm Mike Jones, your co-host with
Chris Stadler.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, not least because my friend and compatriot in the conscious capitalism space, although he does a lot more than I do, a lot more, as we'll get to in conscious capitalism and making that a thing,
right.
is in the studio today.
Or something
right.
like that.
Or something like that, yeah. But yeah, I'm really excited that Brian Mohr is coming on the show today. This has been a long time coming. It's we should have done this sooner.
Well, we get to see each other every single day. We work in the same office. So we have been doing this every single day.
It's
just, now we're doing it with microphones and headphones.
I wish we had these microphones on the airplane from the conference last year.
Yeah,
that would have been really
something.
fun.
Yeah, that was an engaging conversation.
Of course, there were parts of that conversation we'd probably have to edit out.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely wouldn't meet the PG-13 rating of the show.
Although the comments from the guy next to you would have been just gold.
Yeah, those would have been killer.
Yeah.
I noticed when you guys kicked off the show, you made some reference to, speaking to all kinds of great people. And so clearly you've run out of guests because you've lowered the bar
you caught us, Chris.
Quite low on this Wednesday. It is Wednesday, right?
It is a Wednesday.
Yeah. So, hump day. Let's just really lower our standards for one day. The real guest couldn't make it.
That is not
today.
the case. So, Brian, I'll do a little introduction for you because I think people might want to know a little bit more if they don't already know you. You are currently president of Conscious Capitalism, the Arizona chapter.
That is correct.
And then you've got a whole bunch of involvement with conscious capitalism as a movement in terms of the more larger global movement as well.
Yep.
So you are, let me find it here. You're also a member of the board of directors. Is that correct?
That is correct.
For Conscious Capitalism Incorporated.
Yep.
And then a little bit of history. So you started, well, I don't know if you started, but you've been working in, for lack of a better term, staffing and kind of HR people, putting people into jobs for a while now. How did that get started?
So right at the end of 1999, way back then. So good Lord, that's 20 years ago, which just doesn't seem like it's that long ago.
Time flies,
but it is.
Fun.
Yeah. I was wrapping up my career in the financial services space and I needed to do something different. And as luck would have it, I was able to find my way to be one of the first handful of employees at a job board known as jobbing.com. And lucky enough, because of the time I got there, to have been included in the founding member group. There's a group of 9 of us that were there early enough to really help with the, those early stages of growth. That experience, I was there about 11 years, and that 11 years coming from financial services to then moving into this recruitment world, it just changed the entire trajectory of my career and the way I thought about business. Financial services, not that there's anything wrong with it. I was working for Bank One at the time, huge organization, just massive. And I was one of a gazillion people and didn't really understand the power of values, the power of culture, the power of purpose until I got to a very small, high growth company like Jobbing and could see firsthand the impact that hiring people with a common set of values who were going to add and strengthen the culture that we were trying to build. I had no knowledge that even existed. And so that just set me off on this path that I've been on for the last 20 years again. So 11 years at Jobbing, a little over a year at P.F. Chang's and Payway, leading talent acquisition there. And then in March of 2000.
No small feat.
No. And oh man, that's a whole nother story that if we get to it, we certainly can. And then in March of 2012, partnered up with an old friend, Max Hansen, and we started what became the first ever purpose-based leadership search firm called Y Scouts. And so that's now 7 years old. So I've been in some form of talent acquisition, recruiting.
That sounds so much better
for
than my
20 years
description.
than staffing.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Staffing.
You sound like you're from Chicago there. Staffing, hot dogs.
Hot dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you lost your Arizona accent there for a
I
second.
did.
Yeah, totally.
I lost it. We'll come back to that.
I'm sure we will.
That's awesome, Brian.
Yeah. So it's what's interesting as I look back at that 20 years, the piece about business that I think is the most often ignored and the biggest untapped resource is the power of human beings, the power of humanity.
Yep.
We've explored just about every other frontier to the ends of the earth. And yet the piece we still continue to overlook or recognize that has so much latent potential is the power of what's inside all of us. And that's a really, really hard thing to measure. And as a result of, I believe, the inability to measure it, it becomes that much more hard to manage. And so, most organizations tend to just either minimize or shy away from the value that's sitting in their offices inside of their people that could be tapped.
I feel like that is such a key part of kind of the conscious capitalism concept, that conscious businesses are first about people and kind of leading them to that higher purpose and really taking care of all of those stakeholders, which is awesome because segue, our sponsor of this show is Conscious Capitalism Arizona chapter.
You're welcome.
Yes. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that as my best Scott McIntosh.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
We'll keep working on that impersonation.
Yeah. I haven't mastered Scott. I can talk like Scott, not in terms of voice, but I can use my hands a lot.
Okay.
And
that is a key part of that
I can
impersonation.
be very animated.
Yes.
Yet to sound like Scott, that would be a feat.
Yeah.
Well,
no, Chris, you
Let
want
me
to
tell everybody
do a little call
about
out for
Conscious
Conscious
Capitalism.
Capitalism
Please, let's
Arizona?
do it, So this local association is on a mission to share with the whole world how doing good in your business is just good business. This local chapter of Conscious Capitalism Incorporated hosts tons of local events and provides resources for business leaders to instill a higher purpose in their company and engage all their stakeholders. Of note is the upcoming Conscious Capitalism International Conference in April. Wow, how'd you guys get that in Arizona? We'll ask you that later. This year, it'll be right here in our backyard in Phoenix, and we'll draw over 1,000 people from both Arizona and across the world. And that's not an exaggeration. This is a phenomenal event to learn a ton more about conscious capitalism, be inspired to do good in your business, and connect with like-minded conscious business leaders from all over the world. Be sure to check out details and register at consciouscapitalismaz.com. Consciouscapitalismaz.com.
I'm really excited about this conference. I'm excited it's going to be here.
It's super cool.
Obviously.
It's such a wonderful
I had a
It's
dream.
a great conference.
Guys, I had a dream. I gotta tell you that I came in. I
thought you were about to launch into your best Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
No.
This whole show's going to be about impersonations.
It's going to be all in the Arizona accent, which I don't know. So I had a dream that I showed up, and it was like the day of the conference, and I was just like wearing like normal stuff, and I wasn't prepared, and I was like not ready at all. And then I was embarrassed. So I was like, Mike, I'm not ready to go to the conference. I can't go today. I'm just totally forgot.
Because you were in regular clothes?
Yeah, well, I don't know what it was. It was just really embarrassing because you know how dreams are.
Yeah.
And then, but it was like going to school, like, you know how you dream you go to school without any clothes on. You know? It's like one of those like dreams. Anyway, so I'm
not
taking
that kind of conference, Chris.
So I'm taking this very seriously.
Thinking maybe we should divert whatever we were planning on talking about. And Chris, I think you
Really
should lie
delve into
down.
this. Yeah.
Dream psychology.
Yeah.
We kind of need to pick this apart.
Yeah, going
No,
to
but
school with no clothes or no shirt. I've never had that dream. You made it sound like
wait, you've never had that dream?
No.
Oh, we need to take a poll. Like, all right, sound engineer saying yes, she's had that dream. Come on, everybody's had that dream, right?
I don't think I don't have those kind of dreams. I don't have embarrassment dreams. I have fear dreams.
Okay.
Like people want to kill me kind of dreams.
Yeah, I've had
Yeah.
those.
This
I've
is
had
our icebreaker
embarrassment
now.
ones.
Yeah.
I've had those. But
What's your best unconscious moment?
Mariah, our designer, had a dream that you and I were both trying to kill her.
Whoa.
Yeah.
wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. No.
It must have been a stressful week.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's always what mine are. It's always like, what's going on in real life? Stress.
I feel like she likes us. I don't know.
Yeah. Ugh.
Well, if you guys want to talk to me about that later,
We might
I
need-
had an opportunity to do some work with Mariah on
Yeah.
the website. And
Yeah.
I can give
Right
you guys
on.
some insight.
We might need some mediation.
Yeah.
But our real icebreaker though.
A real icebreaker.
as fun as that was, is all right. So conscious capitalism is a topic, right? So what's you guys' favorite story about unconscious capitalism? Subconscious, anti-conscious?
Just straight up unconscious.
Bad
capitalism. Crony capitalism.
Oh, there
Crony
you go.
capitalism.
Yeah.
How about crapitalism?
Capitalism.
Yeah.
I like it.
Is that
it's your
thing, or
next
did
book,
you just
Brian?
coin that?
No, that's that's been
just
a
happen?
slang term that's been floating around the conscious capitalism world for years. I'd love to take credit for it, but
Name
I
it,
can't.
claim it.
It's not
That's
mine.
right.
Although
It
interestingly,
hasn't ever been on a podcast before. That's the real test.
yeah, maybe not. Although I do believe
You
that
heard it here
most
first.
people today would likely associate their view of capitalism as capitalism.
Yep.
As they see, and we can go through a whole host of issues. But to your question, what is my favorite, or what story of unconscious capitalism comes to mind? And I'll go with the recency effect. This past weekend or 2 weekends ago, I watched the Elizabeth Holmes Theranos documentary that is on HBO. I think it's on HBO. And it was, clearly there's more to the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way have you guys seen it?
So tell everybody
I've been following
The story.
Story
So
for
the gist of
several
it for anybody out there that has no idea who Theranos was and Elizabeth Holmes, it's an organization that was on a path to revolutionize the blood testing side of the healthcare business. And right now, Sonora Quest and some of these other fairly large labs have a pretty dominant share of the market. And in order to get your blood drawn, you need to get a doctor's note, if you will, or a prescription from the doc to go have that done. We can't just walk in off the street and have our blood drawn. And they wanted to democratize access to your labs so that you could walk into a Walgreens or any other sort of drugstore, and instead of having a needle stuck in your arm, you could do it through a pinprick in your finger. And they had this nanotainer is what they called it. Essentially a tiny test tube that collected a drop of blood. And from that, they had a machine they referred to as Edison that could perform literally hundreds of blood tests, everything from syphilis to God knows what else, herpes. I mean, you name it, all kinds of stuff. I don't know why those diseases came to mind, but maybe I need to lie down on
couches
a
over
couch.
there.
Yeah. So they were on a path to do that and raised, I think it was almost $1 billion in investment. And over the course of what looked to be about a 7 to 10 year period, not only blew through all that money, but as the documentary shares, never were they really on a path to do this. The Edison machine never worked, and 90+% of the blood tests that they ran on machines that were the exact same, more traditional machines that Sonora Quest and some of the other larger labs had been using. So the commercially successly machines that everybody else was using.
They were outsourcing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because their technology didn't actually do what they said it would.
Not at all.
So did they initially think it would work, and then they just realized it couldn't, but they just it's too late now. Let's double down.
I feel like that's probably closer to the reality.
Yep. I think the intent was pure.
Yeah.
I really do. It's hard to say, right? I'm not Elizabeth Holmes. I'm not Sonny. I think his last name is Baldwani or something like that, the president. And the two of them, as the documentary portrays, were pretty close, appeared to be in cahoots, and the only two that were attempting to continue to perpetuate what amounted to a whole lot of lies and fraud. And they had a big splash here in Arizona. They had a huge facility over at SkySong for a period of time, hired hundreds of people. They had a big national partnership that they signed with Walgreens. I mean, it was a really big deal. And then about a year ago,
traction.
About a year and a half ago, the whole thing completely fell apart and they dissolved. And there's lawsuits and all kinds of craziness going on. But I guess if there is a short answer to the question at this point, my favorite, I don't know if it's a favorite, it's just the most recent of two leaders that I think had good intent at the start and maybe still had it at the end, but wow, did one bad decision lead to covering up another bad decision. And, they were playing with people's lives, and that's, the documentary didn't paint a glorious picture of the way the two of them led the business. It was kind of a bummer.
Mm.
Yeah. I don't know. From my very limited external perspective, it felt very much like very early on, it was a lot of like, you're convincing these investors that your technology, which you haven't developed yet, right,
Yep.
is going to work. I mean, and I don't know of any, early stage tech startup who doesn't have that as like a kind of this hurdle you have to jump. Like, how do you get people to invest in you and have confidence in you that you're going to do what you say you're going to do when you haven't done it yet, right? No one's built it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there might be something in there of like, maybe even early on, they were lying about some of the like prototypes and some of the early science that they were working on and whether or not that was actually legit. But it's like, yeah, I could see that really happening with almost any technology company saying, hey, we're developing something brand new. It doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
We need funding in order to make that happen. We think it will. Here's why. We've got great talent pulled together and we've got, maybe some data and maybe some kind of prototype. And it's like, this should be doable given enough money and enough time.
It's like you need a moral philosophy that basically says, okay, at this point, we're going to stop. Like at some point, we're going to stop and we're not going to push, because pushing forward would mean we're being too optimistic, right? And I think that's the hard part, is that there's a big gray area. Like, is it optimism or is it lying? Like, when does it move from one to the other, right?
Yeah. And I think in their case, they never really asked those questions.
I mean, the only way it feels like, so when I worked at an engineering lab, right, we worked on government grants. One of them was, so there's like a 3-stage process. Proof of concept, which is you don't make anything, not a prototype, nothing. It's just concept. Basically, you say, hey, this seems like it'll work on paper, right? And then you prototype. And then after that, you commercialize. And so that's like an STTR process, I think. Yeah. It seems like you would almost have to have like deadlines, like, like check-ins that you had to prove something that would kind of help that not to happen, right? Because you can lie a little bit, but until your next checkpoint, like investors are going to be at least they're going to get accurate information at each checkpoint, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, you wonder, like, from the investor's side, like, how much did they push for return on their investment? And never really ask those questions either, right? Like, maybe they didn't want to know. Maybe they're just like, this is a great idea, but we need to see return, so just make it happen.
Or is it everyone that's just their part of their portfolio that they're like, well, this is the risky part, and we're just not going to worry about it. We're going to consider it lost, and if it...
I don't know.
I
think there's a much deeper story there.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I would encourage everyone, if they are interested at all, in checking out the documentary. I think it's called Out for Blood.
Okay.
It's
a good one.
Yeah. It's
good title.
Yeah. It definitely is a very one-sided version of the story. And you know what? I didn't live it. I wasn't there. I wasn't employed there. I wasn't an investor. I watched the documentary and, of course, heard about it. And when they came into Arizona and then unfortunately left, it certainly made news. But to go behind the scenes and the way this thing was filmed, and it's coming right from the voice of many of the employees who had been there the majority of the time.
Yeah. And I think that's how the original story broke, was there was a whistleblower.
Yep.
And then there was a media outlet that picked it up.
Yep.
So
yeah, the Wall Street Journal, I think it was, if my memory serves. But it was very fascinating story.
Yeah.
And definitely, when those stories grab the national headlines, and that's what the majority of people see, well, it's no wonder they're losing confidence and faith in the capitalistic system.
Yep.
But that's one company, right?
Yep.
And there are hundreds of thousands of companies that are operating every day that never make the news, ever, because they're not doing anything bad. And they're doing a lot of really, really good things. But unfortunately, as we all know, good things don't sell advertising. And so why report on that?
Yeah.
Which is just such a sad state of affairs.
Yeah.
But that's, again, I may need to get on the couch.
That's
just frustrating.
So Mike, what's your story? Do you have
I was trying to pick one. I don't know if I have one that I want to share publicly. I mean, we've been in business for 10 years, and of course we've had clients that you're like, nah, it was not very conscious. Right. Just some of their behavior. But I don't know. I don't know if I want to get into that. It feels a little too close to home. And I think from an external perspective, I mean, there's great ones. There's, Volkswagen's big, lie, their diesel emissions fraud that they pulled. That was an interesting case of, I think, a company that at heart actually has some level of consciousness deep within their corporate structure. It's just been so buried because they've rebounded really well from that. And I think it's a good case of you can make mistakes as a business, but if you have some level of like conscious kind of capitalism ethos somewhere, it provides an opportunity to actually say, look, we've made a mistake. We're going to own it. We're going to take care of it. And we're going to move forward and we continue to stand on the values that really got us going in the first place. I think Wells Fargo is an interesting one right now, of them trying to rebound from some major cultural issues, not least being, selling a ton of fraudulent accounts and starting up fraudulent accounts in order to boost their numbers internally. And so many of those are really just like reflections of cultural issues where that really stem from leadership that maybe sets up a good vision in place, but doesn't put in place kind of the values and the purpose structure that maintains a level of like corporate responsibility to all the stakeholders.
I think the compensation systems too play such a huge part in that. So you can have all the values in the world and have an amazing purpose. Yet if your compensation structures aren't aligned to reward the behaviors that demonstrate what you want in terms of values, well, then you get the Wells Fargo scenarios where you've got a whole bunch of, managers that are trying to hit numbers because their compensation is directly related to, if I hit these numbers, I make more money, and you incent for the behavior you want. And that's a slippery slope.
That's what I was just thinking. I mean, it's the whole, like, you say one thing, but then you measure something totally different, and it's like, you get what you measure, right? It's like business 101, something like that.
Right back to
should be business 101.
Right back to, what we started talking about at the beginning, because you can't measure what's inside someone's heart and soul and this reservoir of discretionary effort that all of us can bring. How do you tap into that? Well, you can't measure it. So you either need to inspire people to bring it and lead them towards some cause greater than themselves. Of course, you got to pay them enough so that they can maintain their basic living expenses. And we've all heard the statistic, whatever the number is, $72,000, like is some magic number that as soon as you make that, and listen, there's a lot of people in the world that aren't making that. So I'm not trying to,
that's an average.
Make light of it. But as soon as you get past whatever that threshold is for you, the extra dollars are nice, but it's not what's incenting you to bring that reservoir of discretionary effort that you carry. It's something far more intrinsic than it is extrinsic.
So that goes to my story of unconscious capitalism. So I went to work for a small company that sold stuff online, right? And we started, me and another guy who were we're kind of customer service, inside sales a little bit. We helped with orders, and we had so many mistakes in orders, and we just didn't know why. So we were always fixing things, and people didn't get their stuff shipped to them, and we were always fixing that. And then we started seeing that people were getting double charged on their cards, like customers. And after a couple of times of this happening, the owners just didn't really seem like that surprised by it or that interested in like doing anything to fix it. And so, at some point you're like, you don't seem sorry. You don't seem like it almost seems like you are doing this on purpose, because people will call back and say, hey, I got double charged, and we would fix it. But like, what about all those other people who didn't notice, right? So they're probably making a lot of money based on just double charging people. And so the unceremonious way that I got fired is for another podcast, but it's an interesting story.
And so hold out on us, huh?
Oh yeah.
Save that one.
That's good. So anyway, it's equal part incompetence on my part as them hearing what they needed to hear, So, but anyway, but that kind of goes to kind of what you're talking about. There was no way. So you're talking about how do you measure what's in someone's heart? Well, I could start to see behavior on their part that I didn't have to measure anything. I didn't have to be able to see, nobody had to claim in some memo that I happened upon that, oh, we're doing this on purpose. Like I could tell from their character after a while, right? I could start to see it in how they acted, that they didn't really care about other people, And so it was almost like the culture, it was kind of like a reverse cultural situation where I wasn't the leader. me and Joey, my cohort, we weren't the leaders, but we were clearly the ones who cared most about, doing the right thing. And so it was kind of a reversal. Whereas if the leadership cares so much, they're going to start noticing, if you create that culture correctly, right, you're going to start noticing people that don't fit and aren't going to do the right thing for your
it's hard.
It's
hard. You look at a Volkswagen or a Wells Fargo, it's really just a very few bad apples.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's thousands of employees at both of these companies. Most of them are great.
Yep.
How do they get emboldened? Like what little ecosystem, what little skunk works are they in where they're separated from the, to where
the rest of it,
they get emboldened. They think they can hide this.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, there's a premise of and I think this is probably part of that. And I'd love to hear your perspective too, Brian, because I think you've got obviously much deeper experience than I do, but,
in what?
Well, just in the way that companies manage talent, right? The way they manage people. And I think most companies, especially at that scale, right? You get to that big, the really only intrinsic measurement or metric is the numbers, right? It's the sales. It's maintaining the sustainability of the company itself.
You mean the extrinsic?
Yeah, the extrinsic.
Yeah.
And so everything is measured on that. Every behavior, every decision that an employee makes is ultimately just measured on short-term gains and losses.
Yeah. I mean, it's a sweeping generalization that tends to hold true. Yep.
Sweeping.
Yeah.
And I would say it's probably more indicative of larger companies.
100%.
Where the pressure to maintain sustainability is so incredibly huge.
Yep. Growth at all costs.
Yeah.
And where it's measured at a quarter-to-quarter basis.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Which kind of gets to this larger topic of one of the really cool and interesting things about a conscious capitalism perspective is that it really emphasizes the long-term viability of the business rather than just short-term gains.
Yep.
And instead of measuring at the quarterly basis or, whatever the shareholders really want to get out of it, it's more looking at, let's look at these long-term objectives that really honestly match where management is at, because management in these companies really doesn't want to be focused on short-term 90-day cycles. They want to be focused on what's going to move the needle in 5 to 10 years and have dramatic impact on all of their stakeholders.
Yep.
Mike, it's almost like you saw these questions in advance.
Yeah, almost.
Because I'm looking at question 3 and question 3 is question 3. Like anybody cares which question it is. All right.
So I'd love to hear your perspective,
listening
Brian.
audience, just so you know. Why is conscious capitalism? Why is this so important right now? What is its relevance today?
It's I think there's a confluence of factors that are pointing to the relevance, the importance of this thing continuing to grow and strengthen. I'll use the growing excitement and momentum around competing economic models like socialism or versions of socialism. And I think by and large, people who are supportive of a more socialistic system are perhaps not supportive of socialism. They're just sick of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it goes to a lack of understanding at what capitalism has done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not without its flaws. I don't think any hardcore capitalist, I'd be hard pressed to find anyone that's going to argue that it is flawless. It's clearly not. We have issues. We have issues that need to be solved. The solution to it, though, to me, lies in the system that's already been built. So we now need to lift it up to a higher place. We need leaders who are going to lead from a different level. We need an orientation around, well, there are groups of people that the business relies on other than the investors or the shareholders or the owners that are also important. And Mike, to your point, there's an emphasis that, given the speed and rate of change, we better start thinking longer term, not just in terms of, 3-month chunks. And I think we all know, and Drucker said it best, that, culture can't eat strategy for breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever I've heard it, quoted a number of different ways.
I prefer brunch.
Yeah, there you go. So culture eats strategy for brunch. So now there's a fourth option. if we don't, as capitalists, work to not only preserve the system, but also elevate it to what it's capable of, I'm a bit paranoid that competing systems are going to gain momentum, popularity, and adoption. And all of a sudden, all of this amazing freedom and democracy we have to be innovators, to be creators, to be entrepreneurs, to see an opportunity and make that opportunity come to life with few barriers to entry to do that. All of a sudden, all of that spirit of humanness gets stifled because there's some central body, whether it's a government or whatever it is, that's going to determine the equal distribution of what everyone gets of output, input and output. And to me, that's the complete absence of freedom. Socialism's been tried often, and it hasn't worked ever. And, it's fascinating. And I think it's more people are really upset and just fed up with how inequitable the capitalistic system appears to be working. And clearly there's issues. There's some big issues we need to deal with. Yet let's not throw the system away. It has done so much good for the human race.
Well, I think when I look at communism and capitalism, I feel like, or socialism, capitalism, it seems like there's one that's made that accommodates for human nature, right? Capitalism at least will tolerate, it can still function when there's evil, and people basically just say, well, we're not going to buy from you anymore once they figure it out. And it might not happen right now, but at least, people have the freedom to move from here to there and vote with their dollars. And I just feel like socialism doesn't really allow that kind of, it just assumes people are good, And then in some systems, like I think in the Soviet Union, didn't they just killed everybody who wasn't who didn't fit the model? And so in this kind of like social Darwinism, it's like, well, who survives is going to be the people who can, it's just like excuse after excuse, But I mean, at least with just to tie it back, at least with capitalism, there's a chance to prove yourself.
Yep.
A good name will get rewarded.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I'm tying that back into branding right now because, I feel like what we're talking about is branding and conscious capitalism work hand in hand, because a brand is basically me saying, I'm going to make this promise, right? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this thing, make this promise, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to fulfill my claim, or I'm not going to fulfill my claim, but you're going to know because I've made this promise publicly, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Well, and we always talk about, the heart of brand is really authentic identity, right? Like really being able to express as an organization or as an individual, the core essence of who you are in the marketplace, and saying, hey, if we're true to who we are, the right people will be attracted to that and will become our customers, become our advocates, become our friends and fans. And I don't know that I'm no deep scholar on capitalism versus socialism, but in my limited view, what I have seen, what I have read, as a closet historian, or at least history lover, socialism and the strains of socialism that are out there don't produce opportunity for authentic identity, right? The best case for people to best express themselves is through a capitalistic society that says you're free to act, and the marketplace will determine whether that's a viable commercial option or not.
Yep.
Right. I mean, you even look at some of like the most profound moments in human history of art and the creation of ideas. You think of the Renaissance, and what was that really founded on? It was founded on one of the most fundamental economic revolutions the world has ever seen, based primarily around how to bank. These enormously rich families in Italy who are vying for power through their economic means. They're not waging, well, some of them did wage actual war on each other. And this is where, like capitalism and I think the state government can get a little convoluted. And that's probably where we see a lot of challenges. But they personally bankrolled some of the biggest names in the Renaissance. You think of Michelangelo or Da Vinci. Like those are two guys who would not have been able to produce the enormous amount of ideas and concepts and art that they were able to produce without being fully bankrolled by essentially capitalists. I mean, they wouldn't have been called capitalists then. Capitalism wasn't defined yet, but they were probably the closest thing you could get in kind of post-feudal like Europe. You think of somebody like Edison, right? Again, bankrolled by Carnegie, I believe. I think it was Carnegie, who was his patron, right? He really bankrolled, and they were in business together, and that was his financial bank that allowed him to do so much of the research and development that produced, some of the biggest inventions that we've seen in the last 150 years. That really revolutionized a lot of our living, right? Somebody would have come up with the light bulb, but certainly it came faster probably because of that.
Yeah.
And those are the kinds of things I look at where innovation really is not possible unless people are able to freely express themselves and chase ideas.
Yep.
And I just don't see that happening under especially strict socialist rules.
Yeah.
Right?
Why would you? Why put forth the effort?
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who's ever tried to start a business of any kind, big or small, it's hard.
Yeah.
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Who would go through that grind if at the end of it, whatever it is you do that's successful is just going to be equally spread to everybody? Like what for? It doesn't make any sense.
And you still can't find toilet paper. I mean, no matter how hard you work.
It's crazy. So I think, to me, capitalism is absolutely an expression of the human spirit.
Yep.
So, but let me hold your feet to the fire here. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Hard hitting journalism.
Hardball with Chris Stadler.
That's right. Isn't conscious capitalism just a sneaky way of selling socialism?
The Trojan horse for socialism.
It's all conscious business.
Based on the last 5 minutes, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Greed is good, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting so those two words together, conscious and capitalism, it catches, if you've never heard it before, it can be very confusing, off-putting, noxious. It's just those two words that don't go together. And I think in some ways, that's the beauty of the term, is it actually stops and makes you think, at least for a second. If you have any level of inquisitiveness, you'd be like, okay, what the hell is that? As you said, Chris, I think a lot of people immediately jump to the conclusion that this is just a Trojan horse for socialism. This is our sneaky way of bringing socialism into the fold. And that's not it at all. Mm-hmm. All we're asking people to do it's so simple, is celebrate what capitalism has done, but let's not rest on this celebration. There's a lot more it needs to do. And so how do we bring in, and as we've talked about already, I think two just perspectives that have to reemerge, and that is long-term instead of short-term, and stakeholder-centric instead of shareholder only. Mm-hmm. And that's, and I'm a simple guy. Being from Indiana, I like to make things simple, and that's not to minimize any of my fellow Hoosiers out there. But I'm a simple Hoosier, and
it's the Midwestern ethos.
Yeah. The practice of capitalism is long-term stakeholder orientation. That's it. Mm-hmm. Do great business and build something for the long haul. And as you build it, do your best to reward everybody that you need and you need to actually help you build it.
Yeah.
Don't trade off. Don't steal or, minimize one to maximize the other.
Funny, because I think if you polled business owners, right? If we just went up and down the street here and said, hey, can we grab you for 2 minutes, Mr. Business Owner, Mrs. Business Owner, Miss Business Owner, what would you say is fundamental to keeping your business going? They'd probably say, well, taking care of everybody, right? Because that's how my business runs. It's people that make it happen. It's people that purchase the products and services. It's people that supply all the things they need. It's people who provide the capital for, continuing. And then they would say, having a vision, right? Now, whether or not most of them have it, that's another question. In my experience, it's a little less so, but they all want it, right? They all need it. They want to see where they're going. They want to try to project out. They want to have a long-term view, right? This is for my benefit for the long term, not just something I'm just kicking around for 6 to 9 months and then we'll see where I am.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, that's why I love conscious capitalism, because it's so fundamentally basic. It's just
it's simple.
It's just good business, right?
It's just good business.
Think about what would make a good business. And you're like, well, take care of everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have a long-term perspective, have a vision and try to achieve it.
Yeah.
Be sustainable, right?
Yeah.
It's no duh.
Yeah. Well, it's goes back to
And
whole...
sorry, Chris.
Go ahead.
We have to give it a name, so we might as well call it conscious capitalism.
Yeah.
Like we can't it'd be way too simplistic to just call it good business.
Yep.
So we give it a brand, we give it a language, we
Yep.
give it a framework, and all of a sudden, it throws everyone off. Oh my God, what is this? What is this crazy brand of socialism you're trying to shove down our throats? Well, actually, no. We just want everybody to act with good intent and do the best they can and take care of one another. Like, I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox. We're all on this spinning blue ball together, whether we want to believe it or not. So we might as well figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so what you're talking about is, socialism would seem to solve a bunch of these problems by saying, okay, well, we'll trust the government to do it. The government, at least they're elected, right? And they're not after money.
They're never corrupt.
Right. So, right, exactly. So,
there's never any bad things that happen in government.
Right. So
they all get along.
Yeah,
That's for
totally.
Sure.
But
they work together. They compromise. Let's leave it to them.
Yeah. And there are never unintended consequences
Never.
of legislation.
No. And they have vision.
Yeah.
And they're always thinking about what's best for everybody.
They do have a lot of vision.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
They have about a
without much
4 to
sarcasm.
6 year vision. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Their
Well,
vision
you
is
know,
how do I get reelected? That's their vision.
They have a lot of vision about spending money.
Sure.
I mean, they have a lot of vision. Anyway, but so let's say
a different
there's that
podcast.
promise.
We better stop now.
Yeah. So there's this promise that they can make, right? Having been involved with university life, and stuff, you see that a lot. Liberal universities, it's the government can solve it, right? But it almost seems like the only way the only way we're gonna have give capitalism a fighting chance is leading our way out of it, right? Capitalism has to lead its way out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we basically have to say, all right, well, you guys want more morality, right, in business. You guys want people caring about the right things. So you're willing to turn to the government. Well, why don't we lead that? Why don't we do that in a way that why don't we create that vision, right? And then compete with socialism in that way, right?
Absolutely.
I'm just saying, it feels like the only way forward is to have people be better, and you have to teach people how to be better. That was the whole liberal arts, endeavor was, at least a big part of it was, how do you live? How do you function in a free society?
Yep.
And so that you don't become so corrupt that because the government will, of course, they want to solve it for us. If we can't be moral, there are plenty of people in government who will help us be moral. They'll make the decisions for us, and they'll make the laws, and they'll make the...
Yeah, it's interesting, though. There's a really big gap between what's legal and what's moral. That's a huge gray area. I would make the argument that businesses can absolutely do right by the law and still do less than what's morally achievable. Absolutely. And that's a huge delta, which might be a discussion for a whole nother time. But there are plenty of businesses out there that can follow the law to the letter of the law and still not be operating at their highest sense of morals.
Mm.
That's a gray area. There's a gap there. There's a delta.
Right.
To me, law is one thing, and you can run your business to the letter of the law and not break laws. But you can still, in your heart of hearts, you can still be doing what is not in the best interests of your stakeholders, your employees, your customers. You can still do bad things without breaking the law.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a really gray area. It's super murky. And we need leaders that are willing to look at the law as okay, that's just table stakes, right? Okay, yeah, of course we're not going to break the law. But how are we going to operate, thousands of feet above it, because our sense of morals and ethics guide us. The law doesn't guide us. We have a much higher bar of the way we're going to operate. It's not required by law. It's required by me as a human being. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a different set of rules. Mm-hmm. And it might be different for every single person. Yet businesses that form around a set of values and a culture that emerges from people operating at their highest sense of morals, to me, those are the kinds of businesses that I want to be a part of. Those are the kinds of businesses that are led by people that are going to lead us out of this temporary funk that we're in this attack on capitalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, that's I think those are the kinds of places too that are super attractive to people to want to work there, right?
Agreed.
And be a part of that, right?
Yeah. It feels good.
This is a higher purpose.
Yeah.
There's a cultural norm that is far above that kind of baseline. Like, well, we just don't break the law.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
We're not going to operate at the lowest common denominator.
Almost like if the law wasn't there, they still wouldn't.
Exactly.
It wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter.
Yeah. The
right?
law becomes irrelevant.
Yes.
They wouldn't stoop that far down to even get to the point where they're like, is this breaking a law?
Yep.
They're
Right.
playing at such a higher level
Right.
that worrying about breaking a law is like, boy, they would have had to have fallen way far down to even worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing a different game.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in, so you have a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Recently launched book.
Yeah. Yesterday.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yesterday.
Hiring on Purpose.
Hiring on Purpose.
I love that title.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that.
So a little over 2 years ago, Max Hansen and I, my business partner at Y Scouts, and this was Max's idea. I think we always joked around, hey, let's write a book. It'd be great. And Max clearly wasn't joking. I guess maybe it was just me joking. And he had met with some friends of his and some folks that had written books. And they had introduced him to a company out of Austin, Texas that helps people who want to capture their thoughts, their ideas in a book and go through that process, and connected us with them. We ended up working on an agreement with them. And then over the course of a 2-year period, just started writing the book with the help of this company that helps newcomers like Max and I to the whole book world actually organize what has become Hiring on Purpose. And the intent behind the book actually aligns beautifully to the purpose that Y Scouts has, which is to connect people to work that matters and really transform the way people and organizations are viewing this whole employment transaction and moving away from a transaction to a relationship. And with the majority of our adult lives spent working, for it to be anything other than a meaningful opportunity and a meaningful existence is a missed opportunity. And as an executive search firm, helping one leader at a time is awesome, yet that's going to take a really long time to achieve some sort of even a small ding in the kind of impact we could have. And so we thought, hey, wouldn't it be a great idea to capture our learnings to date, put it in a book, and then just give it to people and let them begin to take from what we've learned, particularly as it relates to hiring leaders and making sure you get the right level of alignment beyond just the resume job description fit, which is still an important element. There are parts of the hiring process that didn't go away. We just really spent a lot of time through trial and error adding, well, what are the other pieces that also matter that are often lost during the hiring process, but then found like 6 months after you've hired the person. And then you realize this guy, this gal, they're a really bad fit for us. How did we miss that? It's getting to that stuff early on and ensuring that you put a really big focus on that the same way you would on somebody's resume. And it took us 2 years to capture all that and go through that process. And finally, yesterday, the book launched. And
that's awesome.
I got an email this morning that it has hit a bestseller status on Amazon.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, super cool.
That's awesome.
I don't need
clap track.
Make our own.
I wish I knew exactly what that meant. Not the clap track, the bestseller status on Amazon. I'm assuming it's a really good thing. So
Yeah, that sounds good.
I would hope so.
yeah, I would think so. You know, Amazon, as I've heard, I've never been on the site, but I heard they sell lots of books. So
I think they do.
yeah,
I've heard
among
that
other
they sell
things.
a few. Yeah. Among other things.
Among other things.
In their desire. I recently, total side tangent. I recently heard that Jeff Bezos put out some statement that their long-term goal is to ensure that every single product available in the world is on Amazon.com.
They certainly appear to be heading in that direction.
They're getting there.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it is crazy.
That's just crazy.
You know, what's interesting too is I looked this up the other day for some completely random reason, the number of publicly traded companies on the New York and NASDAQ exchanges today is somewhere around 3,700 total companies. About 10, 15 years ago, that was north of 17,000.
Yeah.
So we've basically, the NASDAQ and the number of public companies were a fifth of the size. The public markets are a fifth of the size in terms of the unit
Quantity.
volume.
Yeah.
And what's even more interesting, so there's something interesting in that.
Yep.
The market capitalization of I forgot what percentage of those 3,000 companies, but the market cap of like the top 10% is 150% of the GDP of the United States. So like you look at Google, you look at Amazon, you look at Facebook, you look at Apple, the big four, and there's clearly a few other companies beyond them, but just those big companies that are like the big ones, their combined market cap is 1.5 times the GDP of the United States of America. It's incredible. Fascinating. So while we've lost a whole bunch of publicly traded companies, either they've been, likely most of them have been acquired by Google, Amazon, Facebook, or Apple, like the concentration of power that is moving towards a very few companies is in some ways also a capitalism problem.
Yep.
You look
It's
at
very much a
Amazon,
capitalism
it
problem.
is. If Amazon achieves its mission of every product available can be bought through Amazon, that's great for them. That's not
good for
really,
the consumer.
No, that's
It's not
terrible.
good for the consumer.
It's terrible for,
and it's not good for the producers either.
no, it's bad.
Because they're beholden to that marketplace.
Yeah.
At some point, it's like basically a de facto government when it gets
That
so
big.
big that it makes the big decisions.
When
in
you
our
don't
lives,
have any
right?
option
Yeah,
other than to
right.
buy from one.
Yeah.
It's a total monopoly on everything.
Right.
Listen, I mean, I don't know how far away we are from Amazon achieving its mission, but at the rate they're going, probably closer than we think.
Well, maybe they'll at least give us uniforms and party cards. We could be like a member of the party, a card carrying, and maybe
We'll all be Amazon Prime members.
their own version of the Politburo.
Aren't we all already Amazon Prime members?
Yeah, and we pay them for it. It's like a tax.
It's crazy.
It's like a tax.
It's interesting.
What's going on? We've been assimilated,
But
we
it's
didn't even know
a
it.
choice. Yeah, I think that's why I think a lot of the questions around like internet neutrality and the ability to spin up new businesses in this marketplace that can compete with Amazon. I'm confident in a fairly open market that there'll be some great competitors to really kind of start nipping at the heels of Amazon in some of the ways that they haven't really taken care of customers. I don't fully buy it. Like, I think there's a world in which Amazon can live and operate and still have this grand vision and yet still have, freedom and choice. And, I think that's coming as long as, we allow for the systems that are required to develop these new ideas and new companies are left untouched or fairly,
Left intact and
and
still available
and available. So, it'll be really interesting. I think the next 10 years is going to be really telling as to whether or not the big four, I love Scott. There's a kind of marketing pundit. He's a professor of marketing at NYU Stern, Scott Galloway. He just wrote a book last year called The Four Horsemen. And it is about Amazon, Google, Apple, and Facebook. He would say the fifth horseman is Microsoft, and how dangerous those four companies are really to like democracy and to the ability for, people to have choice.
Yep.
It'll be really interesting to kind of see like, how do we deal with that? And I think that is intrinsically a capitalism problem.
Yeah.
It's to some degree capitalism that built those companies. And so the question becomes, how does capitalism deal with it? I think it's a lot more nuanced than that personally, but, I think there's a lot of cronyism involved in the background that we don't get to talk about as much.
Yeah, that's kind of the sort of the joke that's likely being played on all of us is we have no idea what's going on. We really have no idea. And we live in our own little worlds, and our little worlds are mostly great. and what's happening in the backdoor rooms of all these massive, we have no idea what's actually really happening.
Yeah. I mean,
and maybe we're better off for not knowing. I don't know.
There's some intrinsic stuff that you can see very clearly, not least being that like every one of those companies can walk into almost any city and demand basically
millions of dollars in tax incentives,
tax-free real estate, right? And say,
which is to me totally asinine. And I get the idea that it's good because it creates jobs, but they're already so damn successful.
Yep.
Like, just pay your fair share of taxes for the level of success you've achieved.
Yep.
Like,
exactly.
Do you need more of an incentive? Really? Like, just how about come in, be a great corporate citizen, create the jobs because you can, because you've built a better mousetrap. So come create jobs. Do you really need millions in tax incentives to operate and put it's interesting that states in the United States of America, we are all part of one country, end up fighting with each other to land companies and start just throwing insane incentives at the Amazons of the world to come operate there. And we're turning our states against each other in these short-term wars or battles to land companies, when at the end of the day, these companies, they have such a huge opportunity to just step up and do the right thing.
Yep.
And listen, I'm not Jeff Bezos. I don't know what it's like to or his CFO to have to write a check for God knows what the corporate taxes are.
It's still pennies on the dollar
compared to what they're doing. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
It's, to me, it's kind of stupid, but
well, it's especially when a state has really high taxes, like where I come from, and then so all the small businesses get taxed at this, the normal rate, which is high, maybe. And then a big company comes in. It's like, we'll make tax free. Yeah. Well, why don't you just? So to me, the problem's on the state side as well. Like, why don't you just charge taxes at a rate that is competitive for everybody. Including small businesses,
right?
Not just like make these arrangements for the big.
Well, then you can't give away free tax dollars to the big businesses, so you got to make it up with all the small ones.
That's tax the poor, and it's not. And the funny thing is, it's the same politicians who are advocating a lot of times for for the little guy. They in one side of their mouth they're saying, it's all about the little guy. What's so switching topics though, because we only have a couple minutes left. What about the conference? So tell us about the conference, and then why Arizona real quick.
I liken winning the bid to host the conference like a city bidding to host the Olympics. It's a really big deal. Now, granted, I mean, it's not the Olympics.
See, I thought it was like a talent competition where you had to walk out in your swimsuit at one point and then play a violin.
Could you imagine if Scott McIntosh had to walk out in a Speedo for the bid to win the Conscious Capitalism Conference? That would be something.
I'm trying not to.
Scott, we love you.
We love you, Scott.
We do a lot.
Keep your clothes on.
Yeah, no Speedos. It's a big deal for a number of reasons. One, we're going to host, hundreds of people that are coming from around the globe who are already well on their way of figuring out how can they lead their business at a higher level and begin to restore and then continue to elevate the brand of capitalism. Speaking of brand, we have this amazing opportunity while these hundreds of people from around the globe are going to come to Arizona to shine a really, really bright light on what's happening here in Arizona. This, as we all know, living here and working here, this is a very pro-business state.
Yep.
And we'd like it to stay that way. We've got, regardless of which side of the political aisle you're on, Arizona's pro-business, and that's a good thing. At least as business, hopefully every business person would say it's good to be pro-business. All it takes is a few Theranos examples to come into your state, take advantage of the pro-business friendly environment that would then swing the regulation pendulum to highly regulated instead of moderately or loosely regulated. And that's why I think it's so important that we all operate above the law at this higher level of ethics and morals, so that we don't even skirt the line of watching or attempting that pendulum to swing to an over-regulation kind of a rule over the land. I'm struggling for how best to describe it, but hopefully that made sense. And so we're going to have hundreds of people here, shine a bright light on Arizona, celebrate the capitalistic system, ask ourselves the all-important question, how do we continue to strengthen and elevate it? And just really meet a group of amazing business leaders from around the world that are really, they're hardcore capitalists and believe that, to Chris's point, that it's this group that's going to lead us out of the mess we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Business is going to lead us out of this. Yep. We don't believe it's going to be government. We don't believe it's going to be nonprofits. And not that I'm not bagging on government. We need government. We need somebody to set up the rules, property rights, rule of law. We need nonprofits to care about the things that they're so passionate about. And we need business to create sustainable, profitable businesses so that they can pay their tax dollars to the government for them to do their job, and give some charitable, philanthropic love to the nonprofits for them to do the job that they're uniquely suited to do. And everybody gets to play their role. But business to me is the tip of that spear. It creates value. People only buy what provides them a better sense of whatever it is they're trying to do.
Yep.
And then you make profit, and that profit then it gets reinvested in the business, and you keep creating, and the whole system works.
Amen.
It's great.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the conference.
I am too.
How can people find out more about that?
So the best website to go to is conference.consciouscapitalism.org. Conference.consciouscapitalism.org. It's April 23rd through 25th at the Sheraton Wild Horse Pass Resort and Spa down in, it's actually Phoenix zip code, but I always think of it as down in Chandler. It's right off the I-10, down near Ahwatukee. And it's going to be an amazing 3-day learning event, connection event. Governor Ducey speaking, John Mackey from Whole Foods Market, and just a whole host of amazing speakers, both keynote speakers as well as the breakout and learning lab sessions. It's going to be a really great event.
Also, awesome. Mike Jones is going to be there, and he will sign your cast.
Yeah, that came up on a previous episode, I think. I got talked into that.
I mean, if Mike Jones is going, everybody listening to this has to go.
I'm excited that Brian's going to be there.
I will be
really
there.
Excited
I
about that.
will be there.
Totally.
So.
We're all
and a whole bunch of other conscious
Chris,
capitalism
you're going.
friends.
I saw your name on the registration.
Karen, are you going? Yeah.
Woo.
Yes, they're going to be podcasting. Or
yes, that's even better.
Look at that.
That's awesome.
Everybody, it's going to be like Max 6 South, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Be a big Max 6 party.
Strong contingency.
Yes.
I feel like that should be a plan.
That should be a plan.
Are we out of time? We're out of time.
We're out of time?
Yeah.
Is there anything else, Brian, that you want to plug or you got coming up that you want to let people know about?
No.
Cool.
Conscious Capitalism. That's the big, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
Conscious Capitalism is what's happening.
Cool.
And then Hiring on Purpose on Amazon.
Yes.
People can find that on Amazon.
Yep. Hiring on Purpose on Amazon and conference.consciouscapitalism.org. Come to the event. Come on out, Arizona. We need you there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody, for listening again to AZ BRANDCAST. This is Mike Jones with my co-host,
Chris Stadler.
And our guest,
my turn?
Yeah,
Brian Mohr.
Brian Mohr. Thanks, Brian.
Should I do it? Brian Mohr.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Like a voicemail greeting.
That's awesome.
You've reached a voicemail of Brian Mohr.
We clearly had a good time because we're all laughing. Hopefully you're laughing with us too. If you want to find out more about our show, check out azbrandcast.com. Be sure to get signed up for our newsletter on there so you don't miss a single episode or any updates. If you like listening to our episodes, check them out on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or wherever you like to get your podcast from. We're on all of them.
And how many stars should they give us?
5 stars.
5 stars.
Unless there's 6, then you give us 6 stars.
Yeah.
I don't think any of them go with 6. They should, though, because our show is 6 stars.
We deserve 6 stars.
If you feel like 4, fine. If you're a little disappointed, you can give us 4. We'll allow that. So 5 stars. 5 stars, 5 stars.
5 stars.
Give us 5 stars. And if
4 stars would be a guest deduction.
I
know. Oh, no.
-1 for Brian.
Oh,
man.
No, I think 5 stars because of Brian.
Because of Brian.
And check us out. Be sure to hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or are we on anything else? I don't think we are. Because who is?
For now.
Yep. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Oh, and a special thanks to our producer, Karen Nowicki of Phoenix Business Radio X, and our gracious hosts here at Max 6.
Yep. And we are looking forward to our next episode next month, where we're going to be having Sam Pagel on.
Sam.
We're really excited about that. Pelican Media.
Sam's awesome.
We're going to have a great conversation with him. So
okay. And remember, everybody, you are remarkable.